Hello, so we're going to discuss the follow-up question and answer session of your oral, which is the last 5 minutes. Remember, your oral consists of 10 minutes, which you go in with your prepared bullet points, and then you have 5 minutes of follow-up questions and answer session. Now, I want to stress that this is not designed to trip you up. Many of you are very nervous about that aspect of the oral. Unfortunately, particularly so if you don't feel that you have a particularly warm relationship with your teacher. Please remember that your success is your teacher's success, and I'm sure that nobody has a teacher out there who doesn't want to see them succeed. And the follow-up question and answer session is designed in simply to strengthen the knowledge that you have already demonstrated and provide you and the teacher with an opportunity to go back over or cover aspects of the criteria that perhaps you haven't touched on. So, for example, if for some reason you haven't mentioned the wider body of work, then obviously your teacher will say, can we just discuss the way in which your global issue relates to the wider body of work? It's their opportunity to say, oh, they really didn't hit that in criteria C, so I'm going to take them back and I'm going to really make sure that they demonstrate their knowledge. So it's there to help, not to hinder. Nonetheless, I know that it is a moment that many of you fear. So I have attached to this video a list of very generic questions. Remember that the prompt is how does the form and the content of your works engage with your global issue? So we want to talk about, the structural choices, as I've mentioned. And, it's very likely that your teacher's going to say something like, can you give me any further examples in the extract where you can see choices that the author has made and the way in which they engage with your oral. So you really want to have some other examples up your sleeve. And I'd like to stress that whilst you may feel that you have no control in this situation, you do. You can go in knowing what you want to say, and you can structure the response and take charge of this conversation. It is, after all, a conversation. It is not an interrogation. So when you're making your selection, and when you're thinking, oh, well, I really wanted to talk about this, or I also have this, or perhaps you've got your extract and you've got so much in it because you have done exactly what you should and you've chosen a moment that's very rich in textual devices, and you think, I just can't cover them all in the time allowed. It's impossible. Be brave and chop. When you're making your decisions, chop. But rather than discarding what you've seen, perhaps you've seen the recurrent use of a metaphor that you think is really interesting, but you just don't have time to discuss it. Don't discard it. Make a page, make a note, whatever. Make a list of things that you might like to talk about in the follow-up answer and follow-up question and answer session, and store that away and come back to it. Okay, I can't use it now because I just don't have time, but I definitely know that when it comes to the follow-up question and answer session, I'm going to bring this up because this is interesting. It demonstrates my understanding of authorial choices, and it's very relevant to my global issue. So a very likely question, as I've said, is, are there any other devices, any other choices in the extract that you feel are relevant to your global issue? To which of the two text types do you feel is most successful in engaging or exploring this issue? Can you give me any further examples from the wider body of work? It might be that your teacher says, and hopefully they've been listening rather than have a pre-prepared bank of questions, and they say, you made a really interesting comment about line 8. Could you take me back and could you just extrapolate, develop on that rather, further? So these are all very possible questions, and these are questions you can prepare for. As I said, have at least one more example from both your texts up your sleeve and bring them up. In your follow-up question and answer session, do make sure that you don't drop your register. Okay, this is really, I think, where your language sometimes falters. Many of you're so happy to have got through the oral that when you get to the follow-up questions, you start to become rather relaxed your register drops, you start to become more informal, and it's more like you're having a chat with a friend at break time than you are talking to your teacher in a formal exam situation. So keep that register formal. And even if you feel that you're falling apart, you're stressed, you keep the register formal. So you don't, you say something like, I'm terribly sorry, I just need a moment really to reflect. That's a really interesting question. I'm just going to take a moment to think about it. Or could you please, restate the question if you don't answer the question? It's absolutely, if you don't understand the question, rather, you're more than within your rights to do that. But you want to make sure that you keep the language formal. You don't panic, okay? What else do we need to do there? Yeah, I think the final thing I'd like to say is that despite this being an exam and despite this being something that's very stressful, obviously, hopefully this is the moment where you can relax and you can really get into a conversation about the work. So don't shy away from taking charge. If your teacher asks you a question, you can say, well, that's a really interesting question, but actually, I think that more interesting, if we look at the extract, is the author's decision too. Okay, or you answer it briefly and say, but I would really like to discuss, this aspect of the text, or if I may, because of the time constraints within the presentation itself, I didn't get a chance to discuss X. I would really like to take a moment now to develop this with you. So you take charge. You can shift the question, answer it quickly, move on to something else. And these are all things that you can pre-prepare. And these, I think, are all things that will make you feel much more comfortable as you move through into that follow-up question and answering session. And just finally, I really cannot reiterate enough that this is not a moment to trip you up. Instead, this is a moment to strengthen and reinforce and add to the grades that you are being awarded through the oral itself. Okay, so prepare, get ready to give further examples, and don't be frightened to very politely take charge and redirect the questions in a direction that you think will best serve you and allow you to demonstrate your knowledge. So good luck, keep it formal, and take charge.